start off by saying welcome everybody to the Andrew Cooperrider show. I'm here with Dr. Ralph Alvarado running for the 6th district. You are watching this Monday, so Tuesday will be everybody heading to the polls as far as that goes. So I'm glad you made some time. I haven't had a chance to talk to you yet here on the show this election season. The 4th district's getting a lot of attention in the primary because that's where the race is, right?
Yeah.
But the 6th district is the closest thing we have to a toss-up district here in Kentucky.
Yeah.
And while it leans Republican, it does have some concern where Democrats view it as in play. The wrong things come together. It is a flip district potentially. So I guess with that, why did you decide to run for Congress? I mean, you're a state senator, health commissioner. Why did you decide to go ahead and run for?
Well, I mean, a lot of the way the story went, I mean, back in March, I got some calls from people that were saying, hey, listen, Andy Barr's running for Senate. You're the natural guy to run for the seat. You got to consider doing this. And so it's flattering to get that call. I kind of blew it off. The very next day, I got some calls from some physicians who said, hey, man, listen, the health stuff isn't flowing like it used to. Why don't you come and run for this seat? We need somebody to fix healthcare on a national level. My wife and I talked about it. We prayed about it and said, hey, sometimes when we get calls like that, I always wonder, is it we should be paying attention to this and exploring it. So we prayed about it and asked, as we usually do when we pray, open doors, closed doors. Is this something I should pay attention to or just ignore? And the next day I made a bunch of phone calls to people throughout the district saying, I'm getting calls. What do you think? And everybody was saying, well, we didn't know you'd be interested. Yeah, you'd be an A-lister. Yeah, you'd be legitimate. But everybody said, hey, we think other people are going to run. And by the time I was done talking to everybody, I told my wife, look, the answer is no. They've got someone else, it's going to do this. There's no point in us doing it.
And I know there was a lot of back and forth about who's going to, I've never said this before, but Elon Musk actually reached out to me about running
really?
The 6th. Yeah, I got reached out to about running in the 6th. A lot of people got reached out to just simply because there was no clear candidate for it. But as you mentioned, it did look like Amanda Bledsoe was going to run for it. And that was kind of, the candidate there. Obviously, you both served in the Senate together.
Right.
And there's a friendship there. But you did end up running.
Yeah. So in June, I got a ton of phone calls in June. One day, my phone blew up. We need to hold this seat. You got to keep it in the Republican column. We can't afford to lose it. They want to impeach the president. We can't lose the majority. And so they said, Amanda's having second thoughts. We need you to give her a call. And so I talked to her. We had a good conversation. And in the end, she said, look, the timing for me is bad. And so I went to DC and had a bunch of requisite meetings up there. They all went really, really, really well. And ultimately came back and I said, hey, listen, we're gonna run for the seat. And some things have lined up and things have taken off. The reason why really is aside from, sometimes you get an answer to prayer that happens months after you pray for it. I thought if the answer was no. And so we just kind of had moved on. But then once we got to the point where things started to move, really, the president has got an agenda. I think he's got a vision for the country. He needs allies to help him kind of advance that. I often on the campaign trail talk about our country being a city on a hill that Ronald Reagan often talked about. I think that city's under attack. The light is still shining on that city or out of that city. But we got people from the inside who are trying to destroy that city, people from the outside. I think the person
Who do you think?
Yeah.
Inside, outside, who do you think's trying? Because obviously, to many people, the America remaining the shining city on the hill, very important.
Yeah.
On the inside, who do you think's attacking at it outside?
I think it's people trying to come with un-American ideals. I mean, you have a lot of the woke ideas that you see out there that I think are infiltrating government. You've got people that are frankly communists and socialists who are adhering to those principles, trying to advance those principles. Those are un-American principles. And so you have a lot of people that are trying to push that narrative, trying to undo what America is. Again, when you have a previous president like a President Obama who would carry a book about, the post-America kind of phase of the world, looking at what, that America's on the decline. I think we're still on the ascendancy as a civilization and as a country. But people out there want to see us kind of decline and be something that we're not. So I think there's people that are trying to undo the thoughts of capitalism, things that have made America great. And we have to find people that are willing to hold the line to kind of every generation to fight the reason why capitalism is important, why freedom is important. something that we don't get to inherit. We have to fight for it, pass on to the next generation. And I think President Trump, I don't know where this country would have been if he hadn't been the president who got elected. So he needs allies right now. Obviously, he's endorsed me in this race, and so he views me as that person in this race who can help him achieve the goals of an America First agenda and kind of moving the country forward.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because you talk about the America First agenda, and you also mentioned about kind of about America not being what it wants to be, and I want to turn to foreign policy.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know where the term America First actually came from in the first place, but it came from Lindenberg. Used it prior to World War II, talking about America staying out of World War II. It was a cry for isolationism.
Right.
So on that same way, now we see some consternation about the Iran war, what's going on overseas, everything else. What do you think America's role is nationally? How do you draw the line between what's a foreign entanglement that's worth getting into, what's not? I mean, obviously our founders talked about avoiding them.
Yeah.
How do you parse through that and as a congressman decide what to fund, what not to fund?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, it's always difficult because
I try to ask only good ones.
Every situation is its own. It's very difficult to kind of make a generalized statement. So I just don't know that in America can be. I mean, prior to World War II, the U.S. was in a much different place economically, militarily. We weren't the leaders of the free world at the time. We've become that now. And so I think we're in a different role. But by the same token, I mean, my father, he was from Central America. He always talked, when he was alive, we talked about this quite a bit. He never understood why the U.S. funded enemies or people that would smile with their hand out and would give them money. And as soon as you turned around, they'd spit at you and give you the bird and leave. So we want to make sure that we can, we help friends, not enemies. I think that's important. Most of the country right now feels like we're helping other people more than we're helping ourselves. And what I use as an American First example, kind of cartoonish, but it's how I can explain it well, is that we live in a neighborhood and we have the nicest house on the block. We have the best home. We make the most money. We have a beautiful yard. We got a great, but the fence is broken and the roof leaks and one of the windows is blown out. The basement door is unlocked. People are coming in, they're squatting, they're sleeping, they're eating our food. We got repairs that need to be done, but we still have the nicest block. And so do we want to spend, money or our resources on other people in other parts of the neighborhood? Or do we want to fix our home first? I said we fix our home first. So we got people that need their stuff done, but fix our fence, fix our roof, do things here. We're going to have money left over. We're generous people. And we want to help others out. But we got people that are trying to attack our home. There's casing us out that want to kill us, take what we have. And we've got neighbors on the edge of the neighborhood who are friends, who are willing to help us be the neighborhood watch guys. And so it behooves us to help out neighbors who are in those positions, to help protect the neighborhood, to identify those people, make sure that we know who's trying to hurt us, take those people out. And I kind of use it that way, that we want to help friends in the neighborhood, not help everybody in the neighborhood necessarily. So that's kind of how I do it. Now, when it comes to entanglements in Iran, I mean, Iran is, I go back to the 1970s. I was born in 1970. I remember watching TV every night, 400 and some odd days of hostages being held. Yeah. What they've done to our Marines overseas. Are the biggest sponsors of terror in the world. The regime in Iran is a major problem, and they're funding things that are trying to kill Americans and kill innocent people all over. They live to destroy the United States and to destroy other countries in the world. We need to find a way to eliminate that threat or to lessen that threat. I think this is a president who, for the first time ever, has taken it upon himself to go in and be able to neutralize at least their military, but right now trying to remove at least their capacity to have a nuclear weapon. He's at the China summit right now. They've sided with China. China's in agreement. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. We know what they'll do with that. And so we've got to make sure they can't have it. I think we've got to do everything we can to make sure that they don't have one. Now, there are others in the region who are willing to fight that fight with us, and we've got to encourage others to help fight that fight. None of us want to see our men and women in arms. If you have to be on the ground and to be involved, I think most Americans don't want to see that happen. But we've got, fortunately, a very strong military who can do things from a remote possibility. So I think we got to use everything that we have remotely to neutralize them and hopefully empower the people within the country to rise up. There was a magic window of time, I think, when we could have done that. And I don't know if that moment is gone, but we've got to find a way to let the people there get that country back, remove the theocratic government that they have in place, and be able to bring in a kind of a normal, civilized government, I think, to be able to have friendships and establish things and provide some peace to that region is what I think we need to do. So I think, the actions the president's taken, I've trusted him on his approach. I think some things, the blockade is something people didn't see coming. It's working. I think it's pinching them out economically. We can bring Iran to its knees and force them to to change their ways. We're hoping that people will rise up from the inside out.
Yeah, and along with that, a lot of people talk about, obviously, let's just call spade a spade. Israel's become such a hot button topic, unfortunately, with a lot of these things. People, talking about, hey, concerned Israel's dragging us into things or out of things. And I think there's good natured views on both sides. And then I think there's absolutely crazy views on both sides. I think
frightening views.
Yeah, frightening views on both sides. You've got sides that obviously are taking the actions of the country Israel and using it to promulgate, hatred for everybody who's Jewish, right? Which is incorrect. But then on the other side, you people that seem to have a really big love and like a belief almost of putting the country of Israel above America's interests. That definitely seems concerning too as well. So you got extremes on either side. Where do you think that falls? What do you think the future relationship with Israel looks like for America? What do you think the right balance is?
Again, I use the neighborhood example again. They're that house on the edge of the block that are they're a front for us, that are often watching what's happening. They have intelligence that's crucial for us from people in the world that want to destroy and kill us. They're a friend. We have lots of friends throughout the world, and we have lots of enemies, but they're a friend. They're a proven friend. And I think they're an ally. And so for me, Israel has its own government. They have their own political fights. They've got people who are vying to change the president now, and they're having elections soon. Sure. So all of that happens within their own government. We're not involved in those things. They pick their own governments and do those sorts of things. What I do know is that they are one of the fronts for us out there in terms of with Iran or with other countries that are creating terrorists who are trying to kill Americans. And so they're a trusted ally and a friend. And I think it's very important for us to continue to be trusted allies and friends with the only really kind of modern democracy in the Middle East that kind of defends civil rights and defends a lot of the same things that we believe in there. So I view Israel as a friend. I think it's important for us to help our friends, but we don't put Israel above American interests. American interests come first.
Sure.
If they suddenly have a change in government and become an enemy, then it becomes a different relationship with them. But I think it behooves us to work with our friends to help protect American lives abroad. And I think it's very, very important. And I think they're the only Western democracy that has the same views, I think, as the United States does in that region of the world. And they provide us incredible intelligence. A lot of the weapon systems that we're using now have been tested effectively there in defense of their country, that we are now looking at applying to a Golden Dome for the United States to do the same thing to protect ourselves. That's come from a lot of that assistance that's there. So I'd rather have them fight the fight there than have to bring that fight here to our shores and our frontiers.
On that same topic of foreign policy and fighting the fight so we don't have to fight it, you have Ukraine, where it's still going on, I guess. We don't hear much about it, but
right.
Obviously the funding of Ukraine war on that side of things, where do you think that falls? Do we continue to fund them? Is America's interest basically kind of like, look, I don't know what our interests are here anymore, or is it more like, I think Ukraine can beat them, Ukraine should be in NATO? What's your thought process?
I mean, this all started from Russian aggression, is what it started from, obviously. So we don't like to see that, but at some point, it's been years now, right?
Yeah.
And so I think even when President Trump got elected, I mean, a lot of his discussions were, do we want to get into entanglements that go on for years, don't seem to have an end? And that's kind of where we're at now. It's the frontiers have been established with Ukraine and Russia, where they're kind of just fighting over the same space. Everything's been decimated there, and people are just being sent to their deaths. So nothing is being resolved. We're starting to see some motion right now. I think Putin has come out recently talking that there may be a deal on the table that they can all agree to find a way to stop the fighting. And I think Ukraine isn't going to be happy unless they get their old territories back. Are they going to be able to get that back at this point? I mean, that's the reality of it. So I think you have to kind of get to a point where, you'd like to see it go back to where it was, and everybody would love to see that. Russia go away, Ukraine gets their borders back, and they get all. Yes, we'd like to see that. Is it realistic at this point, where it's been 4 years and a kind of a new frontier has been established? Do you want to just keep sending people to their deaths without any realistic resolution to that. I don't know what the answer is going to be. It's a difficult problem, but I think we've got to find a way to settle this. This is also a European conflict where we have European allies who want it more. It seems than the Americans do. Yet they want us to expend our resources and our monies and potentially our weapon systems and also our men, and we're not willing to do that here in the United States. So if the Europeans want it, they need to get more engaged in the process and find a way to get it resolved. But it's done to the point where I don't know that anything's moving. Fronts aren't moving. No one's winning. It's neutral. People are just dying. The president is kind of he's stated that publicly many times that he wants to see an end to the conflict. And I think we've got to find a. I think they're ready. Everyone's ready to get this thing ended, and it may have to be that no one's going to be happy. And usually, when you have that, that's a good compromise. Is typically what happens.
Turning kind of to domestic, but still slightly foreign policy, our national debt. Mm-hmm. Obviously, personally, I think a lot of what we do across the globe, whether I look at what we're doing in Iran or dealing with China, those kinds of things, has a lot to do with the fact that we want the US dollar to remain the world's main currency. So that way we can continue to basically go into debt. People will buy the debt, right? And so I look at a lot of our foreign policy, I feel, whether indirectly or directly, is motivated by wanting the US dollar to be the dominant currency in the world.
Right.
And so in that same vein, us being in debt definitely limits our abilities to defend ourselves. It's a national security issue, but also obviously it's a tax on the future generations. We haven't seen, frankly, a reduction in debt in the U.S. government since I think the 90s, right?
Yes,
Bill
right.
Clinton?
Yeah, it was with the Newt Gingrich, Bill Clinton.
Yeah, that was the last time.
Yeah.
And so you look at what's going on. I don't know if Congress can pass a bill or get something done that actually lowers our debt. But what would you want to see on our national debt? What would be the Alvarado plan?
Yeah, I do think it needs to go. It is a matter of national security. It's a huge issue. People don't realize that the U.S. having its currency being the international kind of standard is what keeps us strong. We have 5 countries, right? BRICS countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Those 5 would love to see another currency, and probably the Chinese would love to be their currency.
I mean, the first time ever the yen was used to purchase oil.
That's concerning, because if they switch out, then suddenly all the debt that we have that we just say, no big deal. Now it's like, okay, now payment is due, and you owe, 39 trillion, whatever it is right now.
It's like 118,000 per U.S. citizen.
We're at the highest level since I think equal to post World War II, when we had a reason to spend that kind of money really to fight evil in the world. That's a major problem. We need a balanced budget amendment in this country. Urban state government, every state government that I've served in or been part of has had balanced budgets. You don't spend more than what you have. We've got to do that in this country. That needs to happen. I know there's requests for budgets, and people are saying, are you going to vote against a budget and shut down government over this issue? You have to have a plan. That's what I think we need to have. We've got to find a way to have reductions in spending. Bottom line, we know government is bloated. I would argue, I know we've seen proposals of the penny plan in the past, or 5% reductions. I was here when we had Governor Bevin kind of had a reduction in state government of 9%, a way to reduce that. And if you get charged to say, find a way to cut savings, you're going to find a way to have savings, you're going to have to do that. I think the government needs to find a way, whether it be 3%, 5%, and apply that towards it. There's a lot of fraud being discovered. As we open up this fraud, I think those monies should be applied, obviously, towards reducing debt. I think also if we're going to have a tariff, a tariff system, those tariffs need to be used to apply to reduce the debt. We're reducing our kind of uneven trade imbalance that we have across with other countries. But if we start to generate profits, that money should go in to reduce our debt, because we want to give it to people. That's nice to generate economy, to get people get a check at home. You're going to have more effect by reducing what they owe. Every citizen owes to the government effectively, which is not fair. But find a way to reduce that debt for us. We have to. If we don't do it, we're going to be in trouble. And I think everybody knows that we can't live off of credit cards. At some point, they're going to call what we owe. So that needs to be done. I think reduction in expenditures. I think any fraud that is found, that needs to be channeled back into reduction. If we're generating tariff monies, that should be applied to the debt as well. We can do it. The country's just got to tighten their belt. We're seeing other countries who have had horrible debts. Argentina is an example. We have a president who's come in as an economist and is just slashed and burned. And finally, inflation has been stabilized, their economy stabilized for the first time in decades. We can do it. It just means we're going to have to sacrifice as a country for a period of time, but we're going to have to find a way to get that done. I get to have a game plan. And I think there's lots of contracts that we have all sometimes in government as well that are, done. And in the interest of defense, we'll say, well, we need more time. And they're just granted without looking into the programs themselves. There's going to have to be more scrutiny. People want to see more transparency in government. And I think, again, the idea of having an organization within government that audits itself to start looking at that transparency is very important. We have it at all of our state levels. We don't have it on the federal level. Those things are going to be really important.
So when it comes to budget bills, one of the things, and we see this all the time, oftentimes you'll see senators, congressmen applauded for how much in federal money they bring back home, which is part of the job, not knocking anybody,
Yes.
for getting some crumbs off the federal table.
Yes.
All right.
Sure.
But at the same time, those bring back those federal dollars comes at a cost of continuing to vote for bills that lead to higher spending and those things. How do you balance what you're going to do for the district individually as a congressman that can make an impact on the district compared to what you're going to do with the federal government as 1/435th of 1/2 of 1/3 of the federal government?
Sure. I mean, it's a lot of it's just going to be, it depends on committees you get assigned to as far as that ability. Because there are going to be monies that will be spent on infrastructure in the country. That's part of what we do on the federal level is you're going to find ways of spending money for infrastructure, for transportation. So there's things in the budget, even as you're trying to reduce expenditures, there's money that's going to be spent on things. So you don't just say we're not going to spend anything on transportation or infrastructure. You're going to continue to do that. But it is a matter of building relationships. That's what it comes down to ultimately is when you get into government, it's building relationships, getting to know other people, finding ways to team up. Why it's important that if in Kentucky things are strong, why it's important for other states. We have to identify that we're centrally located. We can be a logistics hub for a lot of other states as far as things moving. If the bridge at Brent Spence isn't functioning, the amount of GDP that crosses that bridge hurts everybody. They say that's going to be an important bridge. You have to find funding for that. So there's things that are going to be important here in the 6th district that we have to have. We've got a lot of locations as we try to repatriate a lot of companies to come back into the country to bring manufacturing, industrial base. We have opportunities to welcome those things. So if you want to bring those jobs, that infrastructure, we can do it here. But a lot of it is it's relationship building. It's gaining, being on the right committees and having some influence for those things, and hoping I've gotten to know a lot of people in my political travels. I'd say in the past, in 2 different states now. I know a lot of the congressmen for both those states, and getting to know a lot of other people over the years. Having been involved in healthcare, I've gotten to know a lot of people within federal government, within the executive branch as well. That you can leverage a lot of those things to kind of be able to bring things home. So as you compete with other states for that attention. You've got to explain why that's important, articulate why Kentucky's important, what that means for America in general. So that's part of it. But you try to get as much as you can. Obviously, if you have more seniority and you have a bit more influence, you can bring more of that home. But I wouldn't do it on the back of having to put the country further in debt. I think you need to, take which is a lot allocated for it, advocate for it, be a noisy person. When I was in the state Senate, I got a lot of money for infrastructure also during that time because a lot of our legislators didn't go talk to the right people at the right time and said, here's the window of time, come and talk to us about transportation needs. They wouldn't go and have that meeting. And so I would go 2 or 3 times, sometimes to bother somebody enough to say, okay, here's an extra project. Just, other people didn't claim it. You have money allocated, go ahead and use it for that. We got other monies or things got moved up in the road plan and that kind of stuff. So a lot of that work was done behind the scenes for it. And it's just a matter of being persistent. And I tend to be that kind of a person. I get something in my mind and you go until you get that problem achieved or solved or whatever. So that's what I know how to do. That's the only way I know how to do it is build relationships and be persistent.
You talk about economic development, and one thing that's certainly becoming a hot button issue is a lot of consternation over data centers.
Yeah.
Now, both sides have points. A lot of not my backyard, concerns about water, concerns about power, concerns about those things coming from the communities these are going into,
right.
Soaring property costs, taxes. But on the same hand, you have another side of things where they're concerned about China getting ahead of us on compute power and beating us in that AI race. What do you think the balance is there? How do we balance perhaps what may be legitimate, some may say illegitimate national security concerns with the right of individuals to control what comes into their community?
Oh, that is the core. The last statement you made is that it is a local decision whether a local community wants it or not. So that becomes local government, becomes local folks. If they say we don't want it here, okay. There are, they're not the prettiest looking things. I know some people don't want to give up,
Yeah.
beautiful images. Hey, I don't want to look at this out of my backyard. The noise that it can generate,
I can tell you what my concern
Yeah.
is. I sorry, I know.
No, go ahead.
But I want to mention what my concern is. Elon Musk talked about this a few months ago. He said, look, the future for data centers is space. You have unlimited solar power. You have all the space in the world. You build them up there. You can beam them back and forth the information. My concern is we build these giant data centers that in 20, 30 years end up just getting moved to space anyways, where power is unlimited and free. You don't got to worry about water to cool it, because space is cold.
Right.
And these giant data centers become just empty husks. That's just a concern I have.
And those are all legit. I mean, we've been around a lot of the district. We have people on both sides of this, and people are, it is a local decision, is what I tell folks. I think AI is something that some people are frightened of. It's the future. I mean, and it's something we have to lean into. It is going to make life easier. I mean, it's going to be an advancement for humans in general. So I do think it's important. The Chinese are right on our tails. It is important, I think, for us to stay ahead of the Chinese on this. And they do require a lot of energy. I think if people are going to allow them, I think data centers should be required to pay for their own energy, so that you're not passing that cost on to other consumers. Water supply, I think they can recycle their own water supply. So once they get water into the hub, they can actually cool it and reuse it for their own purposes, so that it limits how much water is being used. But I do think they're going to be important. Now, where they go is just going to be up to folks. You've got a good point. If these get moved out to lunar locations or something, or other parts of the world, and they can transfer the energy, maybe the data back and forth that way, those are all possibilities. But in the meantime, they are generators of revenue for communities. I think they're important. It's going to have a lot of demand for energy and the consumption of energy. They have to be able to do that themselves. But those decisions are going to be made by local government. So it's going to be people locally, local officials. Do they want them or not?
And federally. And the reason why I ask is because, I know federally at one point there was a push for federal law to override local concerns when it comes to data centers.
I've never, I don't. So I think the federal government's role is to make it as easy as possible. And set the framework around AI and be able to do that. But I don't believe in overriding. I mean, I've been a local control guy ever since I've been involved in government. That is up to local communities. If they don't want something, I don't believe the federal government should be forcing that onto them. When it comes to these, there are communities who want them and are willing to take them in. When you talk about empty buildings, there are plenty of empty buildings we have throughout, our district that can be repurposed for that, and maybe be in industrial areas where you're already looking at something, and so it doesn't necessarily take up space that people don't want to look at. But I think,
and there are concerns too. I mean, I don't know if you see what's going in Lake Tahoe, California, but a data center over in Utah, that power provider, Lake Tahoe, California gets their power from Utah, cross state lines. It's important to this.
Yeah.
The power provider in Utah sent them a letter saying you have 1 year to find some other power source because
you can't.
All your power is going to a data center.
Yeah.
And so people see those stories, and there's a lot of concern there. But I think also when it comes to AI, another concern at the federal level that I'd like your feedback on is you see there's a lot of concern about spying, basically. So one thing I've heard, and there's a legal argument here, I know, and I'm not a legal expert, but for an example, these AIs can pull in all this data about you, and that you have on Facebook, and that's technically public, but an AI can take in all that data and then predict what you're going to do. Wow. Kind of like a precog kind of thing, be able to take an individual and look at that. There is concern about violating people's constitutional rights by saying, okay, we're not spying on you, but we're using an AI to put together all of your public information in a way we can't on our own in order to spy on you. Kind of a lot of what China does. And there's, and certainly too, with this with the recent vote on FISA, there's a lot of concern about AI being used in surveillance and these data centers affecting the surveillance side of things.
Right.
how do you feel about FISA? How do you feel about kind of protecting those constitutional rights?
Yeah, no,
with concern of
very,
AI?
very important. I mean,
It's important to protect the rights,
protect,
not FISA.
protect. Yeah, no,
Okay, I just want to make sure
to protect individual rights. Yeah, very, very, very important. We have to have, I think, a framework to protect individuals. But AI is here. I mean, it's one of those things. Again, it's going to be used to do, I think, tremendous advancements. It's being used in medicine to make physicians more efficient. We're looking at, they probably do a better job sometimes on reading radiology studies, and radiologists are still needed for intervention and to oversee something because computers are not perfect. But it has tremendous advancements when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to robotics, when it comes to farming, when it comes to lots of military weapons and things like that. Crucial. We have to be able to continue to advance that, because the Chinese will be, if we say we're going to slow it down, they will pass us and take the lead on this. So I think it's important. However, to your point, I mean, I think a lot of people, you can't do things that are going to help. They're going to invade people's individual rights. We have to have things that will protect individuals in our country. We have fundamental civil constitutional rights that need to be protected, and I think those are crucial. I mean, that unless we change the Constitution, we should adhere to that and what it says. And so I think it's very, very important. I know there's been a lot of voice about protecting individuals, and we've used FISA for ways that shouldn't be used. We want to make sure that people are protected. So I do think that's important. I know there's been even things like artists have passed laws to say, hey, you can't use AI to copy my voice, and to do, that's been a concern as well, because people were going to abuse that, and all those things need to be protected. So it's going to be very complicated as we move forward. Just like anything in innovation in America, a new field is opened up, and it leads to all kinds of questions and worries. And so, where do we put those limitations in? What are we allowed to?
And I think people are concerned, on the jobs aspect too. I think people are concerned. It is hard, to say the least. It is hard to see exactly where. People talk about other advancements. The car, industrial revolution.
Yeah.
And you can see like how that creates new jobs, new opportunities, right? I think people are struggling a little bit with AI of seeing those new opportunities, and so there's definitely some struggle there. I want to make sure before we end here to discuss about we've talked about your plans and everything else. I want to talk about just some of the attacks on you.
Yeah.
Outside of the fact that you wore the same color shirt as me, and
hey man, good tasting clothes, good taste. That's all right.
Driving me crazy.
Pants too, man.
I've been sitting here. Yeah, I know. I've been sitting here thinking like, golly,
Team Alvarado uniform. Let's go, man. That's what we're talking about.
I've been sitting here thinking like, how did this happen? Anyways, putting that to the side, that you wear the same clothes as me. But one of the attacks, so bad fashion sense, I guess, but one of the attacks has obviously been about, one has been about leaving to go be, quote unquote, leaving to go be health commissioner in Tennessee.
Yeah.
You're a state legislator, and then for a few years you're in Tennessee as a state health commissioner. Obviously, you're a doctor. If you want to speak on that.
Yeah, sure. So the way that, I mean, it was public when it came about, because some people acted like I just left suddenly. I mean, it was a 2-month kind of build up to that before it happened. But we wound up during the campaign for 2019, when I ran for lieutenant governor. We campaigned through a lot of southern counties and got to meet Governor Bill Lee at that time, because he helped, because Nashville TV covers those areas. And so I got to meet him. And after that campaign, we famously lost that race. But then after that was done, Governor Lee, I think after COVID, the Department of Health there had a lot of issues, had gotten sued, and he needed leadership for it, and having a hard time finding someone to lead that. He said, I need a real conservative doctor to run the Department of Health. What about that Alvarado guy in Kentucky? And so they reached out. When they first reached out, we were exploring things like running for governor. We were exploring NCSL. We ran for leadership of NCSL nationally, and I lost that by 1 vote. So there were doors that we were exploring, we were praying about, my wife and I, and those doors closed. And at first they called me, I kind of blew them off. They called me a second time, and I'm like, guys, look, I'm a Kentucky guy. We're chasing Tennessee is what it feels like a lot of the times. And
you went down there to handicap them.
Well, yeah, so actually, they needed a Kentucky guy to fix their Department of Health. Is what I tell people. But we wound up going down, and I interviewed with the governor. And I remember him asking me. He said, "So why do you want to do this?" I go, "I don't know that I do. You called me. I didn't. I'm not looking at the want ads in Tennessee. I mean, I'm doing what I'm doing there." And I had some mentors that I spoke to here, and I said, "What do you think I should do on this?" And they said, "Are you kidding me? That's an automatic." They said. I said, "Yeah, but all the healthcare legislation comes through my fingertips in Kentucky." They said, "Yeah, but this is going to be there's only 57 with territories included health commissioners in the state. The amount of influence you're going to have. How many conservative guys do you know that are in public health?" I said, "There's none." He goes, "There's absolutely none. The Democrats own all this space. They're the ones who act like they're the only ones who understand it. We have our ways of doing things too. We need to have people on that side of it." And he said, "Look, if we take back the White House, it might be an opportunity to serve. I'm not saying they're going to give you anything to serve in that capacity." So I went down and interviewed. We prayed about it, my wife and I. All the doors open for that, and we wound up saying, "Well, we have an opportunity to really influence health policy, which is still obviously one of my biggest passions for the country." And we went down to Tennessee and redid a lot of how they were doing things there. CDC funding that was coming in, we rejected CDC funds, used state dollars for HIV prevention, tobacco cessation, family planning. There were fights there where the
Can I pause real
sure,
quick?
yeah,
This is just
yeah,
a pet peeve of mine.
yeah,
Because I did the math one time.
yeah.
We spend like $8,000 per person who has HIV in the state of Kentucky
hmm
on like HIV prevention and HIV treatment. You know,
Yeah.
I sometimes think it's a racket. I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah. So
And you worked in it, so
yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm derailing from congressional talk.
So
I didn't plan on asking about this.
CDC funds would come. What happened in Tennessee, the third day that I was there, we found out that CDC dollars were going through another grantee and they were sub-granting it. Some of that was going towards organizations that were not aligned with the governors, and Planned Parenthood being one of those.
Yeah.
He
I'm
wanted
sure
to,
like LGBTQ groups.
yeah, and he wanted to scrap the whole program. Florida did that years ago. Back in 2013, 2014, they scrapped it all, and their HIV rates went through the roof when those happened, which is not good because those folks wind up, if they don't have it, they're spreading it. They don't know that they're spreading it. People will die from it. It does become a public health issue. And so, I that was the original idea. I said, no, let me go get money from the state government. And so I went and petitioned state government. Not to mention also the federal dollars that came in, only 30% of that was being used. We'd spend the money, have to prove that we didn't rob them, wait for that to come back. So the money's allocated, it doesn't get used. And we used state dollars and rejected the CDC funds. I got threatened. National stories. I hate gay people. I hate people with LGBT. All this stuff. People are going to die.
Do you hate
Yeah, I mean, come on. And all this stuff wound up coming down the pike, threatening that. And I wound up using state dollars. I had other health commissioners accuse me of all kinds of things.
There's probably the same people too that applaud Fauci.
Well, or
they're calling you a gay
here in Kentucky, who wind up using
Yeah.
all those funds, but they were using federal funds for those purposes. Use state dollars. What happened was our numbers kind of had a slight bump up and then started declining because I was able to put all the money from the state into the field right away because there's no federal restrictions, no strings attached. It's almost like having a block grant, and it came from the state. We were more efficient with it. I put it into partners we knew were working it and using the money appropriately, not to others who were using money and sopping it off, because we found some of that going on with some agencies in the state as well.
Well, I mean, you have here in Kentucky, Bashir handing out a $400,000, what do you call it, infotainment contract to an LGBTQ groups to put on drag shows to encourage, vaccinations and things.
And so the money we were able to use was for organizations we knew would work with us and were doing things the right way. We would audit and oversee that stuff. And when Trump came back into power and came into office again, he started looking at these programs and we're going to cut these. Well, all these states freaked out. Oh no, what are we going to do? I said, we're completely protected. I'm using state dollars. How'd you do that? Well, I talked to my legislators and I explained to them why this is important. And all those programs were now suddenly protected. And we applied a lot of conservative principles within that department and turned it around. So that when I finally, when we said, hey, I'm running for the congressional seat, the governor said, I'm surprised I've kept you this long. You've turned this around. So I had a chance to oversee 3,000 employees, a $1.1 billion budget. I was interviewed by RFK and Dr. Oz for Surgeon General back in November of 24. And they said, your name has been submitted by lots of people to be considered for this. The president already made his own selection. And so I didn't get called. During this campaign, I received a call from HHS. Would you like to be CDC director for the country? And I said, guys, I'm running for Congress. I've committed to this.
Yeah, let me see what happens here.
No. I mean, but that was their comment. They said, "Would you?" I said, "Look, I've committed to this. I'm running for Congress. You interviewed me a year and a half ago, and I know it wasn't your first choice. Well, you're the only person with the experience who kind of aligns with what the administration's doing with HHS and what they're wanting to approach things with the whole MAHA concept." Do you know of anybody else? I go, I know there are guys, but they probably can't get through confirmation. But here are the people that I know of that, or other people that might be of interest to you to speak with.
Yeah.
But we got those calls from that. So those things did happen. But it's also now, I asked when I was going to run for this, also when I talked to people in DC, would I have more influence staying in my other role or doing this? And they said, you'll have more influence because there's only 17 doctors in all of Congress. Nobody understands healthcare. It's a mess. It's broken. It's also burying us from an economic perspective. I said, I know how to fix it. You're going to make some lobbyists upset. You're going to make some organizations upset. But I would argue we need to treat healthcare like a utility. It's ultimately what it needs to be. Everybody needs it. They don't have to make the profits they're making. You can limit it. Power needs to go back to patients, back to providers. Federal government needs to loosen its grip. I think insurance companies need to loosen their grip. Trust people. Let them shop. They'll be able to figure out where costs are to reduce costs, give them control back of their dollars, and they can figure that out. There's no reason why we've created a shadow government with a vertical monopoly effectively to control a lot of healthcare issues. But that's what happened in Tennessee. We served for 2.5 years. The whole time I was there, I asked the governor, can I still practice medicine? And so my wife and I commuted to this very spot, to our home, every other weekend, continue to see my patients here. My wife kept getting her haircuts done here in Winchester. We went to church here when we were here for weekends. We continue to be here in Winchester and just commuted every other weekend back and forth. And then when people were asking me to consider running for this seat, that's when we wound up kind of going back from part-time back to full-time in Kentucky as well.
And so along those lines, as we're talking about Maha and things,
Yeah.
one of the conversations that comes up, a lot of consternation among some people over COVID times, feeling you didn't protect the rights of individuals not to get vaccinated, or feeling you mishandled some bills. Specifically, I think it's House Bill 28.
Oh yeah,
I think
yeah.
a bill to stop private employers from mandating vaccines. And so that's not, they say, hey, he's part of the establishment. He's not a part of Maha. He's not a liberty guy when it comes to vaccines and medical side of things. He's not with RFK on those things. What's your response to that?
Yeah, those are not true. So it's important to go back and look at voting records. So we had a bill, Senate Bill 8 was passed that year that I voted for. It was a co-sponsor for, I believe. Mike Wilson had filed it, and it was basically over that you could not mandate anyone to take a vaccination. So I think ours was the only medical practice in a huge radius here. We had two offices, one in Lexington and one in Winchester. I had two medical partners. We recommend vaccines, pediatric vaccines in particular. I'm a pediatrician. I do recommend that children receive those. But people have a right to say no. There's a lot of recommendations I give. I say don't smoke, and people choose to smoke. You don't mock them for it. You don't hurl insults. You don't kick people out of your practice.
Yeah.
You take care of them. If they have a complication from you, say, well, this is from this, and we have to move forward. The same thing applied for pediatric vaccines. I recommended them. I'd have people would come in. Every time I saw them, I'd recommend it. But if people chose not to, we didn't kick them out of the practice. We were probably one of the only practices in the area. And kids drove from Ohio because most practices would kick kids out. We continue to see them, even if they weren't vaccinated. So that's first thing from my private practice, how that approach. In the legislature, we voted for Senate Bill 8. That House Bill 28, I voted for that bill. Now, there was a way and how that was managed, I think, by the sponsor. You have, when you work a bill, you have to go and ask people to vote for it. And that wasn't done by the sponsor, unfortunately. So when the moment came, there weren't the votes for that bill. I asked on the record, do you have the votes? And the answer was, yeah, I have. And they weren't there. But I voted for it. It was prepped to pass on the Senate floor. They had enough readings on the Senate floor for that bill to move through. So that's how that was handled. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds on it, but I can go back and people can look up the old video and see how it went down. There was also a bill that I proposed that year that recognized natural immunity, right? So that if someone had COVID, if you had 20% measurable neutralizing antibodies and you drew a blood sample and you had antibodies, that would be recognized as equal to being vaccinated. That passed the Senate. The House didn't take that up. And so there were advocates there who didn't try to advance that bill on that side of the fence either. But that got passed. I got an award from the Medical Freedom Coalition for advancing kind of natural immunity and recognizing that as well. So the votes I've taken have been to defend that. As a doctor, my practice has always recognized people's individual choice to say if they want to take something or not do something. People have a right to say no if they don't want to do something. And so I've always respected that in my private practice. And I've argued that just like doctors also have a right, with medical conscience bills to say no. The American Medical Association has a code of ethics for doctors to do the same thing. And so we've always respected those things. I voted for those things when they've been proposed. But it is important that when you advance a bill, it's got to be done in a certain way, and you have to go out and advocate for that and get the votes needed. And when other people don't do that, it isn't my responsibility as chairman of that to go get those votes. It's the responsibility of the bill sponsor to do that. And if somebody who's passed a lot of bills, you have to go work it. If you don't have them, and you don't typically want to bring up a bill to have it be shot down in committee, because we, like in Kentucky, we bring them up to make sure they get advanced. So you rely on the sponsor to have done the work for those things. But we voted. If they go back and look at my voting record again, we had a bill that was passed that would not obligate that. It was the same thing. There's plenty of time masking and stuff for kids during that. We had a famous interaction with Jason Glass, who I think was the commissioner of education, that I questioned him on the same kinds of things. People can go back and look at a lot of those. So it's just, I think certain people will get out, make comments, and it becomes legend. And they
I want to say thanks for giving us the time.
Sure.
You just had your first grandbaby.
Yeah,
yesterday.
we gotta go meet my granddaughter. Yes.
Before we wrap up, just, obviously people will be listening to this Monday. They're heading to the polls the next day. What's your final, final statement to make to them, ask for their vote?
Yeah, so I'm going to remind everybody, we've been endorsed by the president. We've been endorsed by, Jim Jordan, Mike Johnson, Scalise, and the folks that are up there. I think they want someone who's going to have the same mentality, fight for the things to keep this country moving forward. I think President Trump wants allies to advance his agenda. I mean, people are going to help. Again, we talked about just bring common sense back to government, remove a lot of the woke concepts, DEI concepts, things that we've been seeing throughout the country that is paralyzed. I say government, paralyzed our school systems, our business community. Get back to just common sense. We want to make sure that we can revive the economy. The president has a vision for that. He needs allies in helping us do that. And then also defending our border, protecting our country from people that are coming into this country illegally, to make sure that we continue to give our law enforcement the things that they need. And again, if you want someone who's going to advance reforms for healthcare that are required, I'm the only person in this race that's going to have an understanding that's deep enough for that. I would argue that I'm the right guy for the job, and someone who's going to be very present, articulate things well, and be able to represent this district really with pride up in DC. And someone who's going to be present. People that can look back at my track record and see how I did things in the state Senate. I'm going to do the same thing for all 16 counties and hopefully represent Kentucky with some pride up in DC.
Well, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for the time. Thank you, man.
Till next time, guys, we'll be seeing you.